All right, welcome back. We are going to take it to the next level. You watched the video on Rosie Boblet introducing the planning protocol, and here's an example of how you could work this with your teammates on your campus to collaboratively plan for Unit 1 in your PLC meetings. So we're going to take a look at performance task number 1 for Unit 1 for 8th grade. And using the Jamboard, I want you to pick the skills that you're going to need to specifically teach the students during this Unit 1, Part 1. And you're going to use the sticky note to collaboratively add those to the Jamboard.
Okay, so me personally, I think that one of the skills I really want my students to understand and learn is inferencing and using textual evidence to kind of support that. So I'm going to put that on one of my sticky notes.
Perfect.
And I think another one we need to add would be creating new meaning. So I'm going to put that on here on a sticky note.
Okay, so once the students, I think, have done some of the inferencing, they should be unpacking the characters. So I think that's another standard that we might want to include. That would be the character motivation.
Perfect.
Analyzing the skill would be analyzing the character's motivation. So I'm going to add that one as well.
Another one that I'm seeing that the kids are going to need to be able to do is making connections, and that's not only for making connections to themselves, but also to the text and within the world or within the setting of the actual story. So I'm going to add that.
Awesome.
Just adding syntax, I think it's going to be something that's going to be coming up. So.
Excellent. Okay.
Another one I think is important is I need my kids to understand setting and why it's important and purposeful to the text and how to move the plot. So that's another one that I think I'm going to add.
Awesome.
I also see that we need to add not analyzing non-linear plot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that we talk about the specific type of plot, like you said, the nonlinear,
Mm-hmm.
because that's new for 8th grade. So that's, I think, a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Once the students have practiced all these skills, I think one of the last ones to cover would be the overall message, which would be the theme. So that would be another standard that I would include while we're covering this unit.
Okay.
So I'm going to add that one as well.
Perfect.
And then one more that I'm seeing, and they've seen this before, but I think with memoir we need to talk about point of view. I don't know that necessarily needs to be a whole long lesson, but I do think it's important to talk about, especially when we're talking about memoir.
Okay. All right. So I think we got most of the skills from the part 1 of the performance task. So are there any that we can like Emily was saying, where we could group it together? It doesn't need to be a lesson on its own to take up a whole class period. So how can we kind of group some of these together? We could take, I know somebody mentioned plot, and then the sticky note's not on here, but we could maybe group plot and setting together.
Does analyzing nonlinear plot development, I think we could add setting. We could.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Perfect.
Move setting to that one.
Okay.
It's smaller since it's not as important. It's a portion of the plot.
Perfect. Any other ones that we can kind of group together here? Where could we put point of view with?
We could probably put that with theme, maybe, or
theme.
I thought the same with theme. I also thought with character motivations, and I also thought with setting, since it's a memoir, I guess the perspective of time would have a
Oh, that's a good thought.
like a reflection on what the memoir is going to be about.
Okay.
I think then it also is going to go back to the author's purpose and his intention from his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really up in the air on point of view.
Yeah.
Could it be something that we mention when we're teaching the plot and setting as well as character motivations? So it can kind of be just a little bit of a.
I think a memoir would be a really ideal mentor text to show the different ways point of view something across.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
I think creating new meaning and making connections might be really good to kind of show students how they're making those connections to like their self, their other text, or the things that are in the world, and then they use that to create new meaning for themselves.
Which I think lends itself to theme.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be that could be tied in.
Perfect. Okay, so then if we were going to take these and number them in order of how you would teach them, you can use the little pen and you can add a 1, 2, 3, and what order would you teach these skills?
I think the yellow group might be where we start because the students have seen plot before. Plot's not brand new. So that wouldn't take a lot of front loading, but we need to really be specific about the nonlinear portion of plot. And then within that comes the point of view and the importance of the setting for that particular memoir.
Okay.
I would agree. That would be a great place.
That's correct, because anyway, usually a setting is introduced at the beginning.
Yeah.
So the students can make some kind of
I think that
connection there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me too. And I think that after that, a good place to start might be that inferencing and using textual evidence, which I think you could connect that with like the diction and syntax use. So like what words is the author using? How is the sentence being framed that's leading us into whatever inferences the kids are using, and then they can use that textual evidence.
Which ties into making inferences about the characters. So that would tie in the analyzing the character motivations, because the characters are being introduced by now. The student is kind of analyzing the characters' personalities at this point. So I guess that would go as number 3 would be right there.
Okay. And then that would leave theme and creating new meaning and making connections as our 4th number. Okay, great. And now if we can just add some of the specific standard numbers to these skills so we can look at the specific standards that need to be taught.
Okay, so we'll go back to the control panel and look at what are the skills for that specific unit, right?
Here's the standards listed on the control panel. So now we can apply those standards to our skills that are going to teach.
Do we want to go in order from 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yes.
Okay.
So I see on the control panel that for inferencing and text evidence, 5F would be appropriate to use for that skill.
Okay.
So I went ahead and I just edited my sticky note and I just put the standard next to it.
Excellent.
So I'm going to do the same thing for the other ones that I added.
I also added 7C
Okay.
for linear plot development.
And that also goes for setting.
Mm-hmm.
So we could use that. I mean, that standard comes up twice for this unit, and there's 2 sub-skills for that one standard.
Perfect. Analyzing character motivations.
Character motivations is, I think 7B is going to be the fit for this unit.
Perfect. Okay. And then making connections, creating.
That's going to be 5E, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the theme is 9A. That's a big standard.
Mm-hmm.
But add that there.
Wow, you know what, guys? I'm looking at also the guidance documents, and we have 5E, 5H. Those are heavy hitters. So it's really imperative that we do like build that foundation, those foundational skills, and that 1, 2, 3, so that they get the bigger picture when we move on to step 4.
All right.
I also added 5H for creating new meaning.
Awesome.
I think this is really good work for part 1, unit 1, foundational skills that we're going to look at. Let's go ahead and look at part 2. And we're going to do the same process with the skills for part 2 on your performance task. So still in unit 1, but now we're looking at performance task number 2. The students will write a personal narrative. So let's look at what this says. Take a second to read it over, and then go ahead and let's map out
Hi, brother, are you here?
our skills that we need to specifically teach for this writing portion of our performance task.
Eric and I will be in the boardroom. There you go.
Okay, well, right off the bat, I'm looking and seeing that plot's obviously going to be major. So that's one of the skills that I'm going to put.
Perfect.
And I see author's craft, but kind of with a focus on voice. So I think I'm going to add that. I think that's an important skill.
I'm looking at characterization, since they're going to be talking about themselves in the memoir and the people that are involved in it, if it does involve other people. So I think we should focus on that.
Okay.
I know we covered in part 1. I know we covered theme, but I believe that it should be covered again in part 2. So I think we should include it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point because
Yeah.
they're reading and we're really analyzing theme. And so if we want to emulate that, I think that's really important that they practice that in their writing, making sure that theme is really
Yes.
evident.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle with theme. They struggle every year with theme. So I think that it doesn't hurt to cover it again. And like you said, it ties in perfectly.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, I think setting is another. They need to include a setting in what they're writing.
Yeah, it needs to be. I mean, they need to make sure that when they're crafting their memoir, the setting is really. It's a pivotal part of the memoir because that really sets the stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So again, we're going to do the same process and we're going to number. What order would you teach these skills in?
I think just like we did with the first one,
Yeah.
I think plot and setting
Go good
will
together.
go together. Maybe like as they're brainstorming, we're really
Mhm.
talking about these two hand in hand. And again,
That's a
they've
good starting
seen
point.
plot
Mhm.
before, but maybe thinking about it in the way that they're going to use it in their writing. And like bonus, if they can do the non-linear, like we see in the text that we're going to read, if they can emulate that in their own memoir, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
we're moving away from like that basic, plot diagram. We don't want to do that, right? So we're like seeing how's the setting and the characterization, how is that moving plot? How is that like moving the story forward?
Okay.
And they can see the reading portion from part 1 as a mentor text if they struggle with coming up with their own setting.
Yeah.
They can use that descriptive writing in the reading piece.
So maybe
Even
characterization would be
mimicking
2,
the author's craft. Mm-hmm.
and then like 3 would be. What do you think? 3 should be author's craft and voice, or should it be theme? Probably author's
I
craft.
think theme would be the last part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That way we're consistent with what we were practicing in
Yeah.
part 1.
I agree.
Yeah. I think that's a great representation of even the writing process because if they're writing, we're brainstorming plot and setting and everything, then we're going deeper with characterization, then we're even going deeper and revising with that author's craft and voice, and then finally like the big, what's the message that I'm trying to
Convey.
convey exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So now
All
we
right.
go in and we put in our standards.
Excellent. Yes, go in and put in the standards.
Theme is going to be that 9A again. I'm going to go ahead and put it on here so we make sure it's noted.
Yeah, and plot is 7C again.
So is setting, right?
Yeah.
Yes, 7C.
Yes, same.
Author's craft, 9A.
Mm-hmm.
And characterization, right here.
Perfect. All right. Thank you all for your hard work today.
Wow, we got so much accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have a good plan and structure to build our lessons now.
For part 1 and 2. That's good. Good stuff.